Hi, Mark here from Excel and a white wine tasting, in fact a Riesling tasting, and no less an Alsace Riesling tasting. Now these are three single vineyard Rieslings from domain Schieferkopf. Now Schieferkopf, quite a prestigious producer of Alsace Riesling, but part of the Chapoutier empire, Chapoutier being the great producer of the northern and southern Rhone. These are quite fascinating. They are quite different as Alsace Rieslings go. As I say, they are single vineyard Rieslings. They are lieu-dit, as the saying goes in those parts of France, which is to say a named site. And they are named after the three vineyards in which they form, being the Fels, the Berg and the Buhl. Now these have just been reviewed by Jancis, or Jancis' team, over the weekend. And all of the reviewed vintages were the 2017 vintage. Now, alas, that 2017 vintage is extremely difficult to find in the UK, if at all. We have the 2018s, but we thought rather than just try and tell you how good those are based on Jancis' feelings, we would at least get them tasted ourselves. And I've just been tasting them with Mark O'Brien, who's a master of wine from Hatch Mansfield, they being the importers of these wines into the UK, and we've just done a little bit of tasting, gone through them. And here's really what we concluded. So they are remarkably rich and ripe Rieslings, even for Alsace, which specialises in these things. Alcohol level in these is 14%, which is pretty high for Riesling. What's a little unusual about them is all three of them undergo malolactic fermentation, which I shan't go into too much detail about, but effectively it's a chemical process, a very natural chemical process, which swings some of the acidity, very sharp, if you like, apple-like acidity, across to a more sort of creamy acidity, and that enriches the wine. It takes the overall acidity level down a bit, but it makes them riper and richer, and that really shows in all three of these wines. They are that bit fuller, that bit more exuberant, a bit more round in the mouth. So for those people that have typically drunk Riesling in the past, oh, it's a bit thin, it's a bit aggressive, what I would say is that these have a fullness and a richness to them, which is partly engendered by that process. They are all quite limey, quite citric in nature, as you would expect. They're all round, full wines. That sort of sense of sweetness and sourness that you get with Riesling is very much present here. And also, they're all very dry. For all the fact that they are rich and they're ripe, I think it's important to stress all of these are dry wines. I think none of them have residual sugar more than a couple of grams per litre, and that balanced against the high acidity obviously means they have a very dry feel to them. What's interesting is to taste the three, which come from three different vineyards facing in different ways with slightly different soils. If you want to read up on that soil mix and the aspects, then that is all on the pages we have online. But to detail them a little bit, the Fels is probably the leanest of the three in our view. It differs slightly from Jancis' or Jancis' team's note on these three wines for the 2017. And the Fels, well, the Fels is quite interesting. It has a real sort of green, grassy, almost Loire Sauvignon sort of both flavour to it or aroma to it on the nose. Flavour-wise, really quite lean, quite astringent is a little bit harsh, a way to describe it, but I think it's definitely got a little more time to do in bottle. If you're going for the Fels, which as I say is the leanest of the three, well, I think it could do with probably another year in bottle at the very least before you get into drinking that. Great wine in the offing, that's for sure. The other end of the spectrum is the Buhl, and this is definitely both on the nose, and that's the only one of the three, I would say, in which you get that sort of slightly or classic Riesling characteristic, the sort of diesel, kerosene, machine oil smell. Of the three, this is the only one in which we found that to be at all present. But both on the nose and on the palate, it's the roundest, it's the richest, it's the ripest, very much ready to drink now. I think all three of these will improve with time. All of these will improve for another 5 years for sure, and probably considerably longer. But this, I would drink now, I'd enjoy it now. And for me, the richness and the ripeness of this, well, that's the one I would choose. In the middle, in every sense, is the Berg. And perhaps it's a little damned by being in the middle, that it's neither of the two extremes, but it's a remarkably fresh Riesling. It has a real freshness to it. both on the nose, very limey, very lemony. There's all three of them have a sort of quite grapefruit, pink grapefruit characteristic to them. And the burg is lovely, it's fresh, really appealing now. Again, perhaps a little bit like the Fels. It has a real, almost Sauvignon characteristic in that it has this really quite grassy zing to it. All three of them really attractive. They are, being single vintage Rieslings from the Alsace, not particularly cheap. They're all north of £25. But actually, as an experiment in comparing and contrasting 3 different vineyard sites with one particular grape from one particular year, really interesting. And I think they are just a fascinating group of wine